Mr. R.K. Pandey, Member Engineering, Member Projects, National Highway Authority of India, my colleagues from the industry, Mr. Alam Chandani, Mr. Hegde, Mr. Gagan Anand, past presidents of CAI, industry giants, the other participants, a very good afternoon. We are here today in continuation of our series of webinars which we have been holding, and this webinar particularly covers the impact of COVID-19 on the industry. We have been working for the industry, as you know. CAI as an apex organization of the consulting fraternity has been continuously working in this space of trying to promote the profession, look after the interest of the profession for its continual growth, and to find optimal solutions to the various engineering, architectural, and other issues. It is our endeavor to ensure that the contracts provide for all the conditions which need to be there to address the current scenario as we are witnessing. Unfortunately, in the Indian contract law, word force majeure doesn't exist even today. And therefore, the government, when it issued the orders regarding the conditions of force majeure, it used the Disaster Management Act to bring it in. Our effort on various fronts have been there ever since the lockdown came in. We took up the matter with the Finance Minister. We took up the matter with the Minister of Transport and Highways. I had gone and met the Secretary RTH on the 11th of this month, and we had detailed discussions on various issues concerning the industry. The key issues which I touched on with him are release of payment for the already submitted invoices to the extent of 90%. The income tax refunds for the year 2016-17 and 17-18 to be released on top priority. Another very important aspect which I mentioned to him was that while the FM has announced that you will be inducting 2 lakh crores with the banks to give them liquidity, I have suggested again, though we have done it in the past as well, that for projects where the government has granted extension of time without levy of compensation, the interest during construction is due to be paid by you, whether the matter is in arbitration or otherwise. So it will be better if the government undertakes and pays the interest during construction for such projects where the liability is clearly vested on the government. Then we can, on the one side, remove the NPAs of the bank, and on the other side, provide the much needed relief to the banks so that we are able to start the stalled projects and complete them. This, I thought, would be a good way out in the current scenario when you're wanting to finance the banks. The other matter we have taken up are, we should ensure that the Home Office input being done currently is recognized and the professional liability insurance adequately covers it. You see, it is good to work from home. We have to build this culture which already exists in the IT industry, but not in the other engineering industries per se. So work from home particularly for design works, is a very good method, and it helps in all possible ways. We need to increase this culture, but we have to also safeguard that the work so done is covered under the professional liability adequately and properly. We also have to ensure that the contractors all inclusive insurance also CAR also takes care of such situations as pandemic COVID-19. These are certain thoughts which we have shared with the government, and we hope that this would help in moving forward. These are some which I have now narrated. Others I will talk about when we are summing up the other initiatives which we have taken up and which we will continue to work on collectively. Now, as far as this webinar is concerned, we will now collate all the thoughts which come forward for corrections, whether they are in law, they are in rules, or they are in procedures. But we will try to collate all of them and work together with each one of you and with the government at various levels to ensure that the correction is done post haste. This is a call which we all have to take, and we will, I assure you on behalf of CAI, that we will leave no stone unturned to do the needful. With these words, I would like to invite Mr. Pandey, whom I'll briefly introduce to you. Mr. R.K. Pandey belongs to the engineering services and joined the Ministry of Road Transport and Highways as an assistant executive engineer in 1986. He then rose to the level of chief engineer. He moved on to the Premier Road Sector Agency, National Highways Authority of India, as member projects. He was reappointed to continue as member projects in November 2018 for a period of 2 years. An outstanding professional who is respected across the engineering fraternity. He is an excellent human being with positive vibes. He has been, to a large extent, responsible in clearing payments during lockdown towards the end of March. In him, the industry finds the hope of revival at a good pace. Mr. R.K. Pandey.
Thank you, Kapila sir. Good afternoon, everyone. Friends, we are meeting at a time when the industry is passing through a rough patch. But I'm sure with all, when we all work together, this time will be over. But at the same time, I would like to wish you all that you stay safe. To the kind of situation which we are passing, we never anticipated. We never thought of. There are provisions in the contract agreement, concession agreement about force, force majeure. Kapila Sahab said about force majeure, and we are taking help of. Many times I feel otherwise. Even in our contract, we have defined in so much of so much of length that there are force majeure. It could be non-political, political, indirect, political, and all those things. Let us forget about all those. Issue is we are facing a tough time now. As the premier agency for development of the highways, we have two objectives. Number one, how to take off the work which got stalled. All our projects were, stopped because of the situation created. Number two, what about the future program? Coming to the projects, starting the project. In fact, in NHAI, we have around 440 projects, out of which around 80 projects are recently awarded, means awarded sometime in February and March. So appointed date not yet fixed. So we have roughly 360 to 370 works which are of course during the lockdown we have to stop all the works. Still we try to convince the states and got in some of the projects that let us allow them to work. After the first lockdown, we are in a very comfortable position, and I can tell you, as far as NHAI is concerned, we are working on more than 300 plus works. There are only few work which are in the red zone or containment zone where we could not get the permission, and we are not working. Of course, I do agree when I'm saying it started working, it is not with all full efficiency. Reason are obvious, labor problem, then even availability of the material. I can tell you one example where, we were rehabilitating one bridge. We got the permission to carry out the work, but the contractor told us at later date that we need, this bridge was in UP and he needed jacks from the Karnataka. We have taken up with the Karnataka government and got the permission to open that factory and got the jacks dispatched from Karnataka. Subsequently, we realized that we need steel from Germany. So problem varies from project to project, and we are there to provide whatever assistance we can provide to take up such works. Number two, that is more important for you, coming to the plan of NHAI. We had in-depth discussion, and I can only assure you we are going back with the full pace, and this year we'll award 4,500 kilometers and complete something between 4,000 to 4,500 kilometers. Of course, when I talk about completion, it all depends how we are going to recover from this situation, because unfortunately, this position came at a time which was the most right time for an highway engineer. This is the most productive period when we used to, get a lot of work done. Anyway, still we are hopeful that after the monsoon, with all this presumption, that will come back in a big way. Coming to the issue of how we are going to help the contractor, concessionaire, consultants. As you might be knowing that as far as the Ministry of Finance is concerned, they have given broad guidelines what kind of measures can be taken to help the industry. Coming to the ministry side, they have gone one step further. There are a number of proposals with the ministry for giving relief to the industry. One of the important proposal is, as all you know, that today we are working with HAM or EPC project, and where the payments are linked with the milestone. I realize that today contractor or concessions are not in a position to perform with that kind of efficiency which they have planned. So as a result, they'll take much longer time in achieving the milestone which was expected earlier. So we are in a process of issuing guidelines which will give a kind of relief that will delink all these payments from the milestones, and it will be a kind of temporary advance. When I'm saying it is kind of temporary advance, don't link, it will be interest-free advance. And when the stage will be realized, the total amount will be squared up and you can go ahead. During this COVID period, this kind of facility will be available to the contractor and the concession. Not only this, we have decided, okay, we'll have a formula for giving extension, and everybody need not to run after for getting all those kind of approvals for extension of time. Coming to the BOT projects, unfortunately, there are provision in the BOT contracts that in case their toll has been stopped for one reason or the other because of the direction from the government, there are adequate provision in the concession agreement to protect the interest of the concessionaire. Therein, we are giving extension of concession period, and similarly the post-lockdown one will compensate in terms of the traffic. As and when traffic will reach to a particular limit, then the normal concession period will come in force. So from our side, we are trying. This particular webinar, I feel it is at a very appropriate time because there is a committee constituted under the Special Secretary to Government of India, Ministry of Road Transport and Highways, DGRD, who is looking after the kind of relief we can offer, and they have invited suggestion from the industry, different associations. Whatever today we are discussing, I'm sure there will be takeaway, which if you can give it to us as a member of that committee, I'll certainly take up your case. If we are in a position to, extend any help, we'll certainly come forward to do that. Again, let me tell you, the Kapila Sahab said about payment and delay in payments and all those. I do agree, but at the same time, I can tell you, if you see the payment made during the month of March, it was a lockdown period where all the offices were closed. We modified our systems, procedure, policies in such a way that no bill is pending, and probably I'll tell you, this was for the first time it might have happened that during the lockdown period, we have made payment of more than 10,000 plus. So from NHAI side, we are open. Whatever suggestion you have, you kindly give it to us. We'll try to see to it we can extend all those kind of facilities to the contractor, concessionaire, consultant to mitigate their problem created because of this situation. At the same time, let us take it as a challenge. Today, now say COVID, I don't know how long it will be there. Everybody is talking about maintaining social distance, labor problem is there. Can't we think of something which will eliminate, at least reduce human element in our construction, in our supervision and all those. Let us move towards mechanized construction. Let us move towards that kind of machinery that I don't need to go and do every test now and then. Let it come from the machinery itself, that what kind of material has been consumed, what kind of compaction I have received, all those things. Friends, when I'll, this is all those I'm sure you will be debating, but at the same time, of course, it is not exactly related to COVID, but industry as a whole. As an engineer, when on various forum, I'll have to answer the, people, I'll find it very difficult to answer for such small things. When people talk about quality, when people talk about, poor signages, when they are traveling on the bridges, they'll always find jerk, poor maintenance, poor quality of construction, particularly of drain and all those. I'm sure we'll have to do as an engineer something, so that whatever good work we are doing will get the kind of appreciation we deserve, rather than getting brickbats from the road user. I'm sure whatever is deliberated here, we are open. You give all your suggestion. We'll take it to the logical conclusions. Thank you.
Thank you, Pandesha, for that lucid presentation and for all the good thoughts you have shared with us and for the help that we have been giving to the industry. I will now invite my other three panelists who will be speaking one after the other, and I will give a brief introduction about them. We have Mr. Abhin Alamchandani, who will be starting as the next speaker. He is the chairman of Stoop Consultants Private Limited, son of the illustrious engineer and my good friend, Shri C.R. Alamchandani. The founder of Stoop, Abhin Alamchandani, is a recognized award-winning architect who has been awarded Construction World's Best Architects of the Year award for several consecutive years, amongst many other prestigious awards and commissions. He believes that all structures should be designed through integration of technology and aesthetics. A brilliant architect, he completed his higher education in Paris on a French government scholarship scheme. Mr. Alamchandani has been leading the Stoop Consultants team of 1,300 engineers and architectural professionals across 40 countries in the fields of airport, highways, rail, metro, energy, water, and environmental design and project management, along with leading professional engineers of Stoop Consultants Private Limited. His other co-speaker, Mr. V.N. Hegde, presently the Chief Executive Officer of Stoop Consultants and former Executive Director of Gammons, is a senior professional with a rich experience of over 3.5 decades in construction sector in the areas of design management, technical management, site management, project management, and contract management of highways, bridges, energy structures like chimneys and cooling towers, environmental, marine, and hydraulic structures. He is a recipient of IABSC Prize in addition to national awards like Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru Century Award from IRC, Pre-Stressed Concrete Design Award from Institution of Engineers, ICI and IRC awards for best publications, and IBC award for built environment. He has more than 135 publications to his credit and is a member of the various IRC and BIS committees. He is a highly respected professional. The next speaker in line will be Mr. Gagan Anand. Mr. Gagan Anand is the managing partner of Legacy Law Offices, is a dual qualified lawyer admitted as a solicitor of England and Wales and as an advocate in India. He is a member of the International Construction Projects Committee of the International Bar Association. His rich work experience spans across developmental projects in 24 states of India, besides Bangladesh, Mongolia, Kenya, Ghana, Zanzibar, etc. He worked as chief legal advisor of the Punjab Infrastructure Development Board for 10 years and made immense contribution for establishing and implementation of infrastructure development regulatory framework in the state of Punjab. He regularly served as an expert for World Bank and ADB in the areas of regulatory frameworks, public procurement, PPP, and construction contracts. Abhin, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I hope everyone can see the first slide of the presentation. I am now going to take you through this presentation, but before that, let me thank very much Mr. Kapila for his very kind words, Mr. Pandey for addressing us, and we are so glad to hear about how progressive NHAI has been and how concerned they are about members of our consulting engineering fraternity. I would also say, I would like to also say a few things about a few words about my colleagues. Mr. Hegde, our CEO of Stoop Consultants, Mr. Gagananand of Legacy Law. We are all three of us going to raise issues that are concerning consultants. Many of these issues are already being addressed by CAI, and Mr. Kapila will speak about these issues after we have completed our presentation. We thought that these issues are some of the issues that are most concerning our profession, but we welcome all of you all to contribute the issues, and let's make an agenda to improve consultancy engineering profession as we move forward post this pandemic. We have enough challenges, but we will actually meet all these challenges head on, and we'll make an agenda and we'll work with the CI. I will support the CI to see that we live up to this agenda and make a better environment for our engineers. So on to the presentation. The title of the presentation is Contractual Challenges for the Construction Consultancy Post-Pandemic Scenario. A little bit about our consultancy profession. Most of you all know the menace of the novel coronavirus disease, COVID-19, has had a far-reaching and deeper effect on the entire world, not just India. The IMF, World Bank, SPI, and many other economists have predicted that the Indian GDP will be around 1%. It may even go negative. While there is a dilemma of maintaining life and livelihood across the globe and in our country, the construction consulting profession in the infrastructure sector in our country has been most significantly affected during this crisis. Consulting engineering is a very important component. The most critical decisions of feasibility, capital and maintenance costs, physical and financial definition of projects are determined through consultancy engineering, design consultancy practices. You are aware that such firms are dependent on qualified, skilled, and experienced manpower and are valuable knowledge resources. To the right is a picture of a project that we have helped conceive and also which is under execution even during the coronavirus period, the Trans Harbour Link. And you will know that the value creation of such a project comes at the conception stage itself, the maximum value creation. In fact, you will see in this chart to the right-hand side that almost 70% of the value creation of the project happens during the engineering and designing phase of the project itself. During this pandemic and most economic crises, it is widely recognized that one of the ways of maintaining the GDP growth is to maximize the investment in infrastructure and real estate sectors. This is one of the drivers. Despite their cost being only 3 to 4% of the projects and sometimes even less, about 70% of the project value is created by consultants in view of the cascading demand on men and materials. This leads to overall growth of the economy, generation of employment, etc. The consultants are the brains, prime movers, and catalysts of the infrastructure and real estate industry. Since I'm speaking to a lot of my brothers and sisters in the profession, you all know all this, but it's important for us to remind all that even though consultancy is a smaller component of projects, it has a huge impact and it is therefore very important to attend to. Consulting is now most vulnerable during the pandemic, particularly in infrastructure and real estate sectors. In consultancy, the manpower cost is to the tune of 65 to 70% of the expenditure, which will continue to be incurred without almost any revenue during lockdown. After the lockdown, there'll continue to be a crippling effect for some more time, because construction, while it is continuing, and it's great to know that NHI is moving forward. It is one of the leading organizations in India that we look up to. But across India, pan-India, there are various difficulties that various clients are facing in getting their businesses going during this period. In actual construction and manufacturing of construction accessories, the manpower cost is only 5 to 15%. For a contractor, the dependence on manpower is only 5 to 15%, whereas for a consultant, it is 65 to 70%. And it is this asset that is being most hit by an epidemic like a pandemic like the COVID. There are severe liquidity crunch factors also and challenges which may aggravate and even prove to be the death knell for many consulting engineering companies in the near future. One is GST. We must have a look at GST, and as we move forward in this session, Mr. Kapila will explain that a lot of action has been taken by CAI to try and get us relief on GST. Income tax. Again, this is an issue seized by the CAI. We are hit by the high income tax and the income tax norm. It kind of affects our liquidity. I will explain a little more about that later. MSME. Some relief has been given in MSME, but I will touch upon how a lot more should be looked at in order to give relief to the consultancy engineering profession. Banking. We need a lot of help in banking. We will have a discussion on that as we go on. And of course, there's been some talk from the government on Go Local. We would like to elaborate a little bit on reference given to international consultancy firms in India and what should be done for Indian consultancy firms. Now, besides that, there are contractual factors warranting solutions post the pandemic. We've talked about, Mr. Pandey has spoken about force majeure, and so has Mr. Kapila. Mr. Gagan Anand, we made a list of issues. Soup has put together a list of issues, and we made a list of issues, discussed these issues. Extension of time and payments with a waiver of bank guarantees, digital signature, office to increase work from home and approval process, and PMC engineer terms and conditions. Some of them will be touched upon by Mr. Hagen in this discussion. Other operational and procurement issues related to the COVID epidemic will also be discussed. Now let me discuss very, very briefly and quickly about the impact of GST. GST at 18% is in a way not justifiable for engineering consultancy. You see, we have very low input credit. About 3 to 4% is our input credit. So the net outflow is almost 14%, and we make only margins of 10% in our business. Again, there are disallowances of input costs, like those on insurance, medical, etc. The major cost for engineering consultants is on manpower. Construction consultancy does not work on high margins, and GST of such high amounts puts a huge stress on working capital and growth. The payment of GST at 18% of fees within the following month after billing, irrespective of whether we receive corresponding dues from the service provider or not, adds to the financial crunch. Results in a huge stress on working capital load of our companies, particularly when there is a delay from debtors, adding to the liquidity crunch, which has affected them also. So a lot of our clients are affected due to the liquidity crunch, and that leads to larger debt cycles. 18% is equivalent to more than 2 months of turnover and twice the profit of an organization in consultancy like ours. Delay in receivables, sometimes up to 1 year, can result or choke in an organization's financials. It may be said that it is most important that the net dues output input on GST sometimes is not paid by clients for more than 1 year, adding to further working capital crisis. At present, service providers make payment to the government and get it reimbursed by the service receiver after a long time. Instead, we would suggest a number of options which Mr. Kapila will talk about at the end of this presentation, because CI has already taken action on this concern of ours. We would consider whether the entire 18% GST on payments by service provider could be deducted as source by the service receiver and paid to the government, or whether GST by the public sector be paid on reverse charge basis, like it is for lawyers or foreigners without registration. Or thirdly, GST may be paid by service providers on the following month after receipt of the payment from clients. All these suggestions have been made by CI already. Mr. Kapila will enlighten us about the actions taken and the status of this. GST may be kept between, we believe that such a high GST is too much. Our recommendation would be that why not keep the GST within the 5 to 10% slot, for consultants like us. In some projects considered exempted, there's a refund. You see, some government agencies don't know whether they need to pay GST or not. They land up paying the GST, and after they pay the GST, they come back and they say that you want the money refunded from us. We believe that these refunds should be taken directly from the source instead of putting the burden on the consultant to recover these dues. Sometimes these are after 2 years, so it becomes very difficult to recover the dues as per the GST norms. There may be one central government agency to complain when public sector clients don't follow the laws similar to the MSME Act as far as GST is concerned. Now, another issue besides GST, which is going to be tackled also by Mr. Kapila at the end of this presentation, is the delayed issuance of LDRC at higher than the applied rate. In spite of lower TDS certificates, balance accumulated TDS funds amounts to amount 20% of the turnover due to 3 or more years delay. So when we pay the TDS, it takes us almost 3 years to get the TDS back. That means almost 20% of our turnover is actually locked, in this TDS payment. In the first few months, TDS is affected at a full 10%. Now that will assume if you're taking TDS at 10%, it means that you're talking about almost 40% profit, because your 25% is your tax on profit. So you're taking away 10%, means you expect a consultant to make 40% profit. That's a huge burden. And actually at the beginning of the year, to have that burden when we are just about started our new billing cycles is very, very, very cumbersome. Of course, this is all being looked into by the CI, and also the government is concerned about this. So they've first taken a first step by reducing the TDS rates. We believe that with further engagement, we'll be able to get some more traction, and we'll be able to even examine whether we can get the TDS for technical services reduced, to 2%. Well, already TDS for technical services reduced to 2%, but we want our professional services to be recognized in a clarification under technical services so that we can have the TDS at 2%, which is more likely, which is more in the line of what kind of tax we normally pay. Well, CI has already taken some action on this, which we'll learn about at the end of the discussion. And so I'm going to skip these 2 slides. We've talked about section 194J. I'll request Mr. Kapila to talk about it at the end of this presentation. So we've talked about GST, and we've also talked about the aspect of TDS, which is having a liquidity crunch. The third aspect is the government is cognizant that many consultants are actually falling in the MSME criteria, and the changes made by in the definition of the MSME on the 13th of May by our Honorable Finance Minister actually was a very good positive step. However, we believe a lot further revision is required to actually cover the concerns of the consultancy engineering profession. We are aware that just yesterday, day before yesterday, Gadkari Saab has also announced that there will be further revisions to the MSME Act. While these revisions are all under play, I thought we should address some of these issues together and understand the repercussions of these issues and what further improvements we feel should be made. So we are going to make a few propositions to you. We believe that while the redefinition of MSME is overdue, it has defeated the very well-intended purpose of growing MSMEs into enterprises. After all, we want our MSMEs, we want to go local. And if we want to go local, we want these companies to actually grow and become large companies and become good companies which are servicing the entire Indian market. Government has significantly deviated from an earlier cabinet decision and proposed amendment bill of 2018 which was allowing the MSME turnover limit to be revised up to 250 crores. So today they have said that it will be, if you see the last slide, they have said that it will be 100 crores. I'll just go back to the previous slide. They have said that the turnover criteria has increased to 100 crores and the invest criteria is 20 crores. Gadkari Saab has said that he may be considering taking this 100 crores to 200 crores and this 20 crores to 50 crores. And instead of looking at it as and these two, both inclusive, he may put an or between these two. That means either you are a 50 crores investment or you are a 200 crore turnover company, you will be considered to be an MSME. So as we mentioned, that although these steps are overdue, they are being taken. It's a very good step, right? We believe that some further steps are required to really meet the final goal of what we are trying to achieve here. One of the things is, you may learn that this particular bill of 250 crores was actually the cabinet had already taken a decision, okay, that there would be an amendment, okay, where there 250 crores would be considered to be the turnover limit. In fact, the expectation of the industry was that the limit would extend to 400 crores annual turnover, as effected in last year's Finance Act for deciding medium-sized companies for income tax purpose. So for income tax, a medium-sized company is 400 crores. It used to be 250 crores earlier, but last year it was changed to 400 crores. But for MSME today, it is only 100 crores. Now, why not that all up to 400 crores are considered both in the Finance Act and as well as in the case of the MSME Act as 400 crores. That is our proposition, because by this action, medium-sized companies of turnover between 100 to 400 crores are deprived of pending dues by the government in 45 days. One of the advantages and benefits given now. And 4-year loans with capped interest and moratorium of 1 year, amongst other benefits, have been deprived. So we are suggesting that the financial situation of the companies in the bracket of 100 to 400 crores will become precarious. They will get sandwiched between government departments and public sector enterprises, which may be delaying their dues, unlike NHI, which has done such a seminary job of giving thousands of crores in March itself. So, but other PSEs are delaying dues, and their creditors who are benefiting from the MSME Act are also putting pressure on them. A consultant has approximately 60 to 70% of his costs and salaries. In a period like COVID-19 situation, where 2 months is almost lost, despite all attempts we are making to work at home, billing will become practically non-existent. How will these consultants survive? In addition, the government has given advisories to retain staff at cost. They have just recently withdrawn this advice after 2 months of lockdown. What happens to the staff? After all, they are our assets. So, by following this rule, what will happen is companies of 50 crores and companies of 100 crores will be coming under the MSME. In fact, we have to read the fine print to see whether in the long term only 50 crores will benefit and whether in the short term up to 100 crores benefit is only there. We can discuss the fine print issues later. But what is important is that India will become then a country of 100 crore company fighting against international companies and MNCs, which will be thousands and thousands of crores companies. What kind of fight, what kind of battle will India be able to do? And what happens is that there's no encouragement for companies to grow and actually challenge these companies which are taking away a cream of our work. What I would like to say is India will have the big foreign company, the small Indian company, and no middle at all. This is the worry that comes from this MSME Act, which I'd like to present to you. The cumulative impact of slippage in collections, non-payment of outstandings, inability to bill due to the COVID period, pressure from creditors, pressure from staff, lack of orders in the crucial first quarter or more period of 2021, because not much movement happened in orders, although some agencies did push orders, but did not, is really putting a crippling effect on the business. How will engineering consultancy survive? Of course, it will survive. We have always survived, but we have to be helped to survive, and we have to actually take steps together to see that we survive. Will we all be relegated to 50 crore and 100 crore companies subjugated by multinationals? If the Indian construction consultancy has to grow beyond 100 crores, survive and be self-reliant, there is a strong case to revisit the definition of MSME once again. Now, I would like to put some thoughts here. Sundry debtors in companies are almost 6 months to 10 months old. Sometimes the turnover 60 to 80% of companies are affected by sundry debtors. Some of the outstanding dues are aging in such companies for 2 to 3 years. This is an unsustainable situation. All out of this, almost 2/3 of the dues are normally from public sector. These debtors are normally government, PSUs, etc., etc., and sometimes other large contractors, because everyone is having a liquidity crunch. So it becomes difficult to borrow funds also because from banks, because after all, banks themselves have been having their own crisis recently. Consultants are facing downgrading of credit rating, and agencies seem to have derated the infrastructure fraternity as a whole. So in such a situation where there's a lot of impact of liquidity, there's also an issue of how to fund businesses. It is very important that all these things are looked at globally. Both the GST, the TDS, the MSME Act, and we are able to make all this work together if we really want to go local and grow Indian companies and Indian consultancy business. And I believe that the CAI will take all necessary steps to see that that happens. The service industry and employment-oriented business may be treated as an organized priority industry for credit, if not better, with lesser collaterals. This is a recommendation of ours. Service industry and employment-oriented businesses may be treated as an organized priority industry for credit, if not better, with lesser collaterals. Help us with our banking. Help us with our funding. Government may ensure that government and PSUs approve the services of professionals immediately and pay the dues in time, not as per the progress of construction. I was so glad to hear Mr. Pandey say that they've already taken steps towards this. I'm sure the effort being taken by CI in this matter is going to help the consultancy profession. It is very much required, not just with NHI, but with all public sector companies, and also from private sector. Why only public sector? Now I would like to touch upon another issue that that the government of India is concerned with, and that is why we are talking about going local. Go local. And then we say 200 crore limit. This, let me explain. The global tenders to be disallowed up to rupees 200 crores. That means only Indian tenders in 200 crores. Indian MSMEs and other companies have often faced unfair competition, the government has said, from foreign companies. Therefore, global tenders will be disallowed in government procurement tenders up to 200 crore rupees. Necessary amendments of general financial rule will be effected. This will be a step towards self-reliant India, Atmanirbhar Bharat, and support Make in India. This will also help MSMEs to increase their business. All very, very good steps being taken by the government. It is commendable that this thought and idea is being pushed by the government. And I hope that, and I know also that CI has also taken a lot of steps in this direction. I will request Mr. Kapila to enlighten you about that. Now, there are some questions about this 200 crore limit and about this whole notion of 200 crore. And I believe that some further clarifications can be sought and some improvements can be made in what is a very good initiative from Government of India. Mid-sized firms are competing against international consultancy companies who have the advantage of deep pockets, low-cost funding, foreign government backing, and international resources. Most of these companies are actually getting funding maybe at 2 to 3%, and they are competing against us who are working in the Indian market at high rates of interest. Even the MSMEs are borrowing money at interest rates which are high and higher than some of these firms. So that is a very critical aspect. Secondly, while the cream of the country's projects have been backed by foreign consultants based on their references and financial strength, we are working on airports. I've shown a picture of the Hyderabad International Airport, and with great difficulty, Stoop has got the lead design role today in Vijayawada, almost 14 years afterwards. But even today, if an airport bid goes to tender, international consultants will get the job because the reference criteria has been made in such a way that if you have done 5 international airports, then you get more points. So we in our own country do not get to take the lead position in projects. We have to struggle to reach that lead position. So it is true that we have to look at these aspects which is beyond just this idea of 200 crore limit. Most major projects like lead consultancy, general consultancy for metros, smart cities, and the cream of the airports have been taken by international consultants today. And we believe that in the next few years, there's going to be a lot of construction activity in India. And we believe that India and Indian consultants should actually grow if we want to go local. And we should not limit this to only 200 crores, because a GC of a metro project will be going up towards 200 crores and above. Why can't this be done by Indian consultants? The Central Vista project has been awarded to an Indian architect by this government for 258 crores. So we believe that Indian consultants should be given such prestigious assignments. They can hire international players. They can hire international CVs and bring them in their team. But why not give the Indian consultants this role of taking the lead on building the nation as we move forward? International consultants get low-cost international funding, and they normally scavenge on Indian companies by buying out their ownership and manpower. We have all experienced stress of actually not having the kind of dollars to be able to resist that kind of onslaught. Unfortunately, despite the thrust on self-reliant concept, pre-qualification criteria is formulated such that international consultants can give their international references and get the work done through local companies. They have their own local companies and they sub-consult to a lot of local companies. So the know-how and goodwill actually goes, international. Few Indian consultants are growing on to challenge these foreign consultants. To be able to handle larger projects, consultants need to have a certain scale, particularly when scale itself becomes the criteria for government guidelines. Thus, for realizing self-reliant intent, it is imperative that the MSME limit has to be increased to 400 crores so that Indian consultancies can grow in scale, and the limit for global tendering should be also enhanced to 400 crores. I will now request Mr. Gagan Anand to take on the next part of the presentation. He will be discussing contractual issues and restrictive clauses. We have defined some of them together, but Mr. Gagan about it as a legal expert. Gagan?
Yes. So, while the consultancy tasks are being performed by consultancy firms, there have been numerous instances wherein blacklisting and debarment of consultants has been done. So in this context, it is suggested that it must be ensured that the government or the CVC issue some standard guidelines for blacklisting, debarment of a firm, and policies and procedures for taking serious negative action against consultant by government PSUs, but not in an arbitrary manner. Because what we have seen is that debarring or blacklisting affects the civil rights. It has a civil consequence. Contractors, consultants, any agency which is debarred or blacklisted is unable to participate in future bidding opportunities, and it actually affects their right to business, the right to livelihood. So an empowered national regulator or an approving authority should be established by the government with regional presence like the NCLT to approve or disapprove the action of blacklisting or debarring, and no organization should have power to take such action on their own, because there could be certain prejudices, certain biases when the consultancy firms are dealing with the client department. So that is why we are proposing that decisions regarding debarring should be vested with an independent agency. And when it is related to a matter of condition for qualification, action should be applicable only to the client concerned and should not be made applicable to the other clients. Like we have seen in many cases, a particular state government department debars a consultancy firm or a contractor, and that consultant or contractor is unable to participate in bidding opportunities all over India, because there are clauses you have to submit an affidavit that you have not been debarred or blacklisted during the past 3 years or 5 years. Then the other issue is there are instances wherein termination takes place. Termination takes place, penalty is imposed or liquidated damages are imposed. And quite often these things are disputed. These are referred to dispute resolution. Terminations get reversed later on. The penalty or the liquidated damages which are imposed are later on reversed in dispute resolution proceedings before arbitral tribunals or courts. But what happens during the intervening period? The consultancy firms and the construction agencies, they continue to suffer, because if they have to file an affidavit that they have not faced termination of any contract during the past 3 years or 4 years, they are unable to submit affidavits. during the submission of their technical bid, and they become ineligible. So these aspects need a relook. Next slide. Now, as per some RFP documents through which the bids are invited from consultancy firms, 10 or more litigation or arbitration cases leads to disqualification. Now, this is absolutely uncalled for. The consultancy firms should have the right to exercise their legal rights, refer genuine issues to dispute resolutions. Consultancy firms doing large projects every year face genuine issues with clients, leading to some disputes which are required to be referred to arbitration. And when there are arbitration clauses introduced in the consultancy contracts, the prospective employers and government departments should not object to it and should not make it as an ineligibility for subsequent contracts. The ongoing contracts have been adversely affected due to various governmental orders pertaining to COVID. The government came out with various types of restrictions, curfew in certain states, lockdown. So because of these restrictions, the consultants and their employees, their experts have been unable to execute the tasks under the specific consultancy contracts. Even in respect of construction contracts, the construction agencies have been unable to execute their part of the construction work, and this calls for extension of time. The Ministry of Finance has recently come out with a circular, and pursuant to that circular, the NHAI, NHIDCL, MORTH, all of them are coming up with their respective circulars for grant of time extension for a period of 3 to 6 months. But how and in what manner it would be applied to specific contracts needs to be seen, and how they are going to determine whether 4 months for a particular case or 6 months or 5 months, it is yet to be seen. Similarly, it is very, very clear that the performance bank guarantee provided by the consultancy firms, contractors, concessionaires would be required to be maintained for a longer period. If the contract had a duration of 12 months and the period is being extended by 6 months, so the BG cover would be required to be provided for an extended period. And in this regard, the authorities ought to consider reimbursing the additional bank guarantee charges paid by the consultancy firms and contractors, etc. Besides this, there are going to be additional costs, not only for the consultancy firms, but also for EPC contractors and PPP concessionaires. The consultancy firms would be required to deploy their resources for a longer period of time. There could be demobilization costs and remobilization costs. Same applies to EPC contractors and PPP concessionaires. In the case of EPC contractors, the labor issue has become a big problem. The labor has gone back, and to remobilize them is going to be really challenging. And I also have feedback that the prices of raw materials have tremendously increased. PPP concessionaires have been suffering due to stoppage of toll during the first phase of lockdown, and even now during the subsequent phases of lockdown, the toll collection has not built up to the proper levels. Some of the concessionaires are reporting very, very low toll collections. So appropriate compensatory measures have to be made for this. The Ministry of Finance has come out with a circular which contemplates grant of extension, but interestingly, the line ministries are not following it up in letter and spirit as of now. Numerous debates have been going on regarding invoking force majeure. Now, invoking force majeure has caught fancy with almost everyone, whether it be the public sector undertakings, government departments engaged in administering consultancy contracts for infrastructure infrastructure or the agencies who are dealing with the construction contractors. And on the private side, the consultants are invoking these clauses, the concessionaires, the contractors. What is important is that one should understand in depth the concept of force majeure. There are different types of force majeure. Many of the contracts delineate between political force majeure, non-political force majeure. So these things have to be kept in mind. And in many of the cases, people simply wrote down letters stating that because of COVID, we've not been able to do this. And there came a reply from the government agency saying, so what? Government agency has also been obstructed due to COVID. And both parties have to bear their own respective costs. So enforcing or invoking force majeure requires a lot of skill set. You need to carefully study the provisions of your particular contract. You need to see the facts and circumstances of your contract and then see that what is the right way of invoking it. Whether it is the COVID per se, which prevented you from executing your tasks, or it is the governmental orders which prevented you. I have observed in certain cases, particularly in the case of toll collection by PPP concessionaires, initially the government came out with an order directing that no toll is to be collected at any toll plaza, citing COVID. Few weeks down the line, there were governmental orders that yes, now the toll collection can resume. What is the difference between the month of March and month of April or month of May when the toll collection has resumed? In fact, the spread of the COVID disease has increased tremendously. In spite of that, the government of India has permitted the collection of toll. So the point is that it was not the COVID-19 disease per se which led to stoppage of toll collection. It was the governmental orders, the lawfully issued orders which had to be complied with. So these things have to be kept in mind. Distinction must be drawn between political force majeure, non-political force majeure, and indirect political force majeure.
Mr. Hegde, you will be taking it on from here.
Yeah.
So the post-COVID scenario,
I'll be taking over from
Mr. Hegde, I would like you to do it very fast because we are running out of time. Your two colleagues have taken more time than was allocated. So
I will do that. I will do that.
Run through. We will cover all the points later. We have already taken some of these initiatives and we will cover the rest. But please just run through and try and quickly finish it.
Abhin, I think you just continue to run the presentation because by switching over may take a little bit time.
I already switched over, Mr. Hegde.
Okay, fine. I will take it then. I will take it then. Yeah. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, all the participants. I'll just run through because Kapila Saab is saying that we are short of the time. So far, the financial as well as some of the legal aspects have been addressed by Abhin as well as Mr. Gagananand. I'm going to just touch upon some of the operational as well as the procurement issues. Now, I'll just come to the DPR projects. This is one of the other operational issues we are facing. Normally, in case of the DPR projects, the payment is related to always the survey, completion of the survey as well as the LAP, that's a land acquisition program, so which takes time and investment. And also we suggest in case of the DPR projects, the progress should not be correlated with the payments. That needs to be taken into consideration. The 2CBS has been already addressed by Kapila through the CEI forum quite a lot. There was a tender on the low L1 bidding also. I think we suggest 90 to 10% instead of like 70 to 30%. I think the quality should be given more importance rather than the cost. And also we should see that the dilution of the core competencies of the consulting fraternity will not take place. For example, giving rating to this equipment as well as the survey equipment as well as the inspection equipments for consideration of the bids has to go. Consultants should be always assessed based on the engineering capabilities, not on the survey equipment, in our view. I hope this also will be considered later. The work from home, it's been always, like the dream of India to go digital. I think perhaps this COVID-19 period is a disguise, what they call it is the opportunity in disguise. We'll have to take it as, and we'll have to move towards the work from home concept. See, it's very much possible for us to do the work from home. You just look at one of the bits which is being worked out through the work from home concept from the officers, and this is the bit which is going on in Middle East, and this is a corporate office, and this bit being worked out from the work from home, and the work from home concept has to be recognized as the definition of the workplace. I think Mr. Kapila is going to touch upon this. I don't want to elaborate much. What I mean to say is, here you can see the diagram or the picture on the right side. Entire the work from the concept as well as the design has been developed using the parametric design, has been used in the design of this dome which is inside. It's a corporate office which is going to come up in the Middle East. That can be done. In fact, on the basis of the CEI work from home webinar which was conducted, in fact, that on the basis of that, many of the people have started, many of the consultancies have started working from the home, and that webinar was very helpful, and most of the consultants perhaps have started working from the home as on date today. So the ecosystem should be created to expedite approval, billing, and collapsing process by video meetings. They should be made time-bound and digitalized, recorded and maintained for a limited prescribed period. Consultant submissions should be 15 days are deemed to be approved. And also the some of the the digital concept can be implemented during the COVID period, which can be continued afterwards. For example, for the government and PSCs and private sector projects contract, digital signature certificate and documents can be made valid for all the proposals as per the contracts. Power of attorneys, indemnity, etc., and physical copies or other documents should be replaced with the digital signature documents. The propagate and popularize digital signature concept, an online payment process with access should be provided for the government. Officials for dynamic and smooth processing of projects and contracts. Stamp duty can be paid online as done for the filing with the ministries. Online filing with the notary code also may be thought of similarly. On the right hand side, on the principle of the work from home, with the principle of the work from home, one of the township which is being developed for the Middle East competition can be seen. This township is developed from the work from home for the area of 1.5 kilometer to 3 kilometers. So the work from home and the digital operation is possible. It should be made enabled by the government. And also, last couple of slides, I just want to highlight on some of the difficulties faced for the PMC jobs as well as the authority engineers jobs. Authority engineers or the PMC jobs are still being done during the COVID period, and some of the projects have been completed. As you can see, the Durgam Cheru bridge, which was recently completed during the COVID period, is a clear manifestation of the same. But there are some issues which has to be addressed. As it is not possible to discontinue the services of the personnel deployed at site, there should not be disputed payment of the PMC as well as the authority engineer during the pandemic, which should be additional. Some staff may not continue due to the crisis. There should not be any penalty for replacement or liquidity damages for delay in deployment. Our consultants should be allowed.
Anything else you can bring out later? I think we should now go in for the question.
Yes. I think there's an issue about reduction of billing rates.
Yeah, we will raise it. We have already raised it. We'll raise it.
That you are already raised. That can be taken off. And the maximum payment may be done based on the deployment of the personnel and services rendered, and not to be on the progress of the construction, and that also can be addressed. Consultants will not be able to make ends meet if there is a delay at site due to non-payment of the construction workers, equipment and material by contractors or delayed by employers. Consultants should be compensated for the additional staff, travel expenses, cost, accommodation requirements to maintain social distancing, address and has to be addressed consultancy fraternity and also contracting fraternity to a large extent. In summation, in our suggested changes post-pandemic to help the profession are, which has been well explained by Abhin as well as the Gagan, make the payment of dues in 45 days a national requirement for construction consulting, not just restricted to MSME. Make this binding on the public as well as the private sectors. Consider the GST on receipt of the payment. I think there has been
Please
lot of
close this now, please.
Yes. Reduce the TDS component to 2% of the compliant companies. Collective guarantee must be introduced with the agencies, minimizing the bank. This is the last two sentences, Kapila sir. Guarantees, requirement, and bank guarantees and retention amount should be released in proportion to the work completed. In line with, this is a very, very important last sentence, in line with the thrust on self-reliance for MSMEs, the turnover limit to be increased to 400 crores and global tendering limit to be enhanced to 400 crores. With this, I'll come to the end of my presentation. We consultants have a long journey to traverse before these goals are achieved. With the help of CAI and the government, we hope this journey will be an elevated corridor. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank
More
you.
is first,
Thank you.
Kapila.
We have received a few questions. If I'll read the question, this is from Mr. Kunal Sood. Any notification from government which sets out maximum period within which public sector clients have to make payments? I would request Gagan Anand to take up this question.
There is no such notification by the government agencies so far for making payments in a time-bound manner. This particular issue is actually governed by the provisions of the specific consultancy contracts in the case of consultancy firms, and we must look at that.
There is another question from Mr. Ravi Narayan, which says GST reimbursement are pending with the clients for quite a long time. Part reimbursement should be made where initial review has been done. Well, this is what we have already taken up, and we will continue to take it up. The same is true for not only GST but also from the IT refunds. So we are, wherever reimbursements are required, wherever cases have been processed, we have been insisting that these should be paid. Unfortunately, government has not yet taken a call and paid these, but we will continue with the deliberations in this regard. There is another question: will a foreign company registered in India be allowed to participate in the tenders where global tenders are not permitted? We'll try to see that that is not allowed, but we cannot give any definite answer as of now.
As far as the legal position in this regard is concerned, if the foreign company incorporates a new subsidiary company in India, the subsidiary company would try to claim the benefit of Article 14 and try to participate. So what could be done to obstruct them is that they should not be then allowed to rely upon the credentials of the parent company.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, but if the foreign company establishes either a branch office or a project office in India pursuant to RBI approval, it would still be treated as a foreign company not incorporated in India, and it would be ineligible.
Thank you. Further, we have received a question from Mr. Prashant. For financial year 2021, TDS should be deducted at 2% instead of 10% for consulting firms. We have already taken up this. We have written to various organizations based on the legal advice which we have obtained from some leading practitioners, and those advices have also been attached with the letters. Some clients have already deducted 2% in the last payment, while others have not yet taken a call. So this is an ongoing process. We are at it. NHAI has issued a circular in late October for releasing pending payment through EOT is not approved by them. However, it is not paid. We are again taking it up in the suggestions which have been asked by the NHAI, and a presentation to them is likely to be done very shortly, and we will re-emphasize on this to ensure that it is corrected. Manoj Singh, with respect to GST, it is advisable that the service recipient directly pays to the government and issues certificate of the same. Yes, this we have already taken up. It is in advanced stages. I will explain in detail. I can do that even now. You see, what we have done in the case of GST is that we had taken up this. But we have been working on this for a very long time. In fact, when the service tax was still there, and they wanted the service tax to be paid within a period of 30 days, and irrespective of the fact that we have received the payment or not, we moved at it. And when this change was brought in 2011-12, we had requested, and on our request, 6-7 letters were written by the then Secretary RTH to Secretary Revenue in the Ministry of Finance. Mr. Gadkari himself had written 2 letters at that point of time to Mr. Arun, but it somehow did not work. We have been continuously working on it, and last bit, when the last budget was announced and the finance minister was attending a meeting with the FICCI National Executive, I had again taken up this point and explained to her that this is not in order at all, that while you pay us after 4 or 6 months, or at times after a year, you want us to deposit this amount directly within a month of receipt of raising the bill. She was astonished to hear that it takes so long to get the payments. She said, please give me examples. And I had mentioned to her in that meeting, it was on the 3rd of February, that we will build a dossier of such cases, and I'll come and personally hand over to you. The dossier is ready. Unfortunately, the time when she gave, immediately there was a lockdown, and yet I couldn't go and meet her. I have again sought it, and I'm sure I will get a time to present the dossier to her, and some correction we'll try and bring. We have raised all these points in that letter to say that either you pay directly, or you we will pay after 15 days of receipt of the amount. And if all this is not possible, at least raise the time to 6 months for depositing rather than 30 days. So these are various options which we have written, and we are at it, and I'm confident that we will achieve success. It has been a long fight, but we will continue till we succeed. If there is any possibility of increase in concession period due to reduced traffic on tolls, even after resumption of office, yes, we will take up this matter with NHAI, and I'm sure they will be able to see the rationale and address it. Sir, if the force majeure clause is revoked for any project, then what will mean that the contract is terminated and clauses in the contract are invalid? Would you like to take this, Gagan?
Yes. If force majeure clause is invoked in respect of any project, whether it be private or government, it would not mean that the contract is terminated automatically and the contract would become invalid, because in many of the contracts, solutions have been provided how to cope up with the force majeure situation. So the answer would actually lie in terms and conditions of the particular contract. The blanket statement cannot be made that the contract itself will stand terminated or it would become invalid. So the facts of each case would be need to be examined to provide an answer to that.
You see, what I'm proposing, and I mentioned earlier also, in my introductory remarks. We will be collating all these problems and we will try to address these suitably in the amendment to the various contracts. We will have to clearly bring out the responsibility of making these payments to us as is envisaged in the political framework of the force majeure as it exists today in various contracts, and not non-political, where the each party is supposed to take care of his own side, rather than the responsibility being vested on the government to address and pay the money. See, this is absolutely necessary. If we will try to have this also incorporated appropriately in the construction contracts, in the contracts of factories. Every contract, it should be a part of all deliveries to the government. That in such a scenario, the payments will be made to the workers by the government agency. Their wages would be paid, so that a scenario which we have seen of migrating labor is not repeated, which has put every Indian's head into shame. All these corrections will have to be made in the contracts, and this seminar will bring out those corrections in the contracts and present it to the government for incorporation.
Three questions also.
If a construction site is closed and no work is going on, how much of the fees can a PMC claim for such period? Gagan, would you like
Again,
to?
yeah. Now I'll provide the answer to this. There are consultancy contracts which have standard provisions for catering to this kind of a situation, and I'll read out the clause which I think already adequately addresses the situation. It says, during the period of their inability to perform the services as a result of an event of force majeure, the consultant, upon instructions by the client, shall A, demobilize, in which case the consultant shall be reimbursed for additional costs they reasonably and necessarily incurred. B, continue with services to the extent reasonably possible, in which case the consultant shall continue to be paid under the terms of the contract and be reimbursed for additional costs reasonably and necessary. So I think these contracts for consultants already cater to this situation. If the service goes on during force majeure, they'll be paid, and if the service stops, then there are already provisions in the contract for extending the period and for reimbursing the reasonable demobilization and remobilization costs.
You see, they should also cover the cost for the people who have been staying there during the lockdown period, because they have not been able to move from site. Is that adequately covered in the contract?
I believe so, sir, because the provision says demobilize, in which case the consultant shall be reimbursed for additional costs, and if the demobilization does not take place, that provision says continue with the services to the extent reasonably possible, in which case consultant shall continue to be paid in terms of contract and be reimbursed for additional costs. So there is a provision for reimbursement of additional costs when services are rendered during the force majeure period.
Okay, thank you. Anders sir, would you like to elaborate on this?
Sorry, I was in between, I was not there, but there are 2-3 issues particularly. I heard people are talking about more on termination, blacklisting, and all those. My suggestion to the industry is why we think of termination and blacklisting. We should not even bother about blacklisting and termination. Let us perform in a way that nobody can blacklist or terminate. Coming to the issue about the COVID and the cost related with this. Now again, there are 2 types of contract. One is the DPR contract, another is the supervision consultancy. Supervision, it is on the basis of the man month. So since you are there, I think there is no issue about payment. DPR, which is more on a deliverables. There, we expect that if you are working even from home, you will be paid for that.
Thank you for that clarification. Should we not, Mr. Arvind Brara has raised a question, should we not pursue with the government that the service contracts overseas should have encouragement in terms of tax benefits, etc.? We will certainly take it up, but since it is not related with COVID-19, I would suggest that we discuss this and deliberate and take it up in a comfortable manner. The evaluation criteria for selection of consultancy is getting diluted in recent times. This is regarding the QCBS, which has gone down to 70-30 from earlier 80-20. You see, we have already written on this and sent a separate letter to NHAI in which we have enclosed the examples of as how to the if we do not put limit to the cost, it totally results in not only 70-30, 80-20 or 90-10, but these become something like 60-40, 50-50. Sometimes the 70-30 goes to 30-70 reverse. So it is something which get totally tweaked with the cost. So we are requesting that we should have a limit of plus minus 20%. So the costs which are more than 20% of the average and those which are lower than 20% of the average, those bids should not be considered, and thereafter 80-20 should be applied. We have already answered the question, why can't government agencies GST pay, deduct and pay GST? This we have already answered. Next. There is a question from Mr. Ankur Bhatnagar. Sir, in order to seek compensation from employer on account of losses due to lockdown, we can invoke change in law clause. Since the Epidemic Diseases Act, based on which lockdown has been enforced, was not enforced during tender stage and neither in invocation on the scale could have been foreseen it by the contractors. Gagan?
The answer to this would depend upon the status of the particular contract, whether firstly there is a provision regarding change of law or not. Secondly, how the contract management has been done, the communications exchanged by both the parties, and to outrightly say that change of law can be invoked or not, it's not easy. But yes, almost all the state governments came up with new COVID regulations 2000, and definitely there is a case wherein the law has undergone a change, so it may be possible to change in law. And change in law, if its consequences cannot be dealt in accordance with the provisions of 17.3, such like provisions are also covered under the political force majeure. So invoking change of law could also provide you a linkage with the political force majeure in certain scenario, but I foresee that such issues would eventually end up in dispute resolution proceedings if adequate policy measures acceptable to the industry are not announced.
Okay. Thank you. If in private contracts, the contractor eligible for payments from the employer against idling of his resources during the lockdown period. Gagan, would you like to take that as well?
Yes, sir. Certainly, the contractors do have a right to claim for idle machineries, and there have been cross correspondence going on. I have specific examples with me from all across India, wherein government departments tried to classify it as an event of non-political force majeure, saying that it's an epidemic. Epidemic is non-political. But the contractors, the concessionaires, they've been taking the stand that no, our performance has not been stopped due to COVID-19 per se. Our performance has been stopped due to the governmental orders, and these governmental orders, which were restrictive in nature, led to expropriation of the rights of the contractor and expropriation of the rights of the subcontractors in many cases. And it is very clearly mentioned that political force majeure includes expropriation of the rights of the contractors or subcontractors. So once the contract management is done properly, the correspondence is proper, and the contractor is able to establish that the stoppage of work was due to the effect of governmental orders, yes, the contractors would be in a position to claim idling for labor machineries. But weekly reporting obligations and all those things have to be complied with. Proper notice has to be given to authorities well in time that what they are going to claim, what is the effect of that force majeure. Everything has to be demonstrated.
Right. For contracts where GST is exempt, the associate or sub-consultant of the lead consultant is unsure to pay GST or not, because the lead does not get GST from the client. But when the associate or sub-consultant raises his invoice for his share on the lead, he needs to raise GST. Any clarity on this from the government? Pandey sir, would you like to take that?
You know, all our contract either I'll say inclusive of GST or exclusive of GST.
So will it also apply to the sub-consultants for the main consultant? The problem is that what his question is asking is that GST is, the contract says GST is exempt. And the sub-consultant raises the bill with GST. How does he dispose of that?
Generally, I don't say exempt. I say inclusive of GST or exclusive
Right,
of GST.
you don't say exempt, whether it is exclusive or, but if it is exclusive of exclusive of GST, in that case, would the GST be payable by the sub-consultant?
That I have no, to be very frank, I don't have any idea. But as far as GST is concerned, then in that case, you will get some kind of plus minus when you will raise your GST.
I think so. I also believe that should be the thing. One has to pay the GST and probably claim as a refund when you are filing your GST return.
I think Mr. Gagananand will be able to throw some light on this, sir.
No.
One Mr. Manoj Singh has asked, thank you for your detailed view. This seems to be biggest obstacle for consultancy fraternity. I believe your efforts will help us all. What is the question, Azur? We have to compliment her. Thank you for it. How is the HS of the employee who is WFH taken into account in the contracts? Rajiv Iyer. How is the H&S of the employee who is work from home taken into account in the contracts? Yeah, I can't really understand this question in full sense. How is the H&S of the employee housing and are these allowances he's talking of with WFH taken into account in the contracts? No, we have a rate for the inputs. So the full rate would be payable if the payment has to be made for that work. So I think the gross salary will be payable to him and not
I think he's talking about health and safety. Someone has made a clarification. Mr. Prasanna Shah has made a clarification. He's talking about health and safety of the employee. So basically insurance, of the health and safety of the employee. We are putting them in danger. So many of them are working on sites during COVID period and during lockdown period also. So what kind of effect will government take up the insurance of these?
I think insurance will have to be taken up by us, and then we can seek reimbursement from the government.
Right, I think so. So we should make a move towards that direction. That's the best way forward.
Let us do that.
Right.
That is the answer to it.
Right.
The next is from Mr. Alok pray. So Kapila, what about we as consulting fraternity would offer to minimize the cost of our deployment and improving value proposition of our offerings? I think we are, I will send you the answer because we are now about to close. So at this time, I would like to just give some closing remarks, and or any other question which you want to raise, please send it to the CI Secretariat and we will be happy to respond. I would also request everyone who is listening here to come out with suggestions which they feel, or any problems which they are facing, which we have not been able to discuss in our presentations, and we will be happy to take them up. But
Thank you, sir.
what we essentially will be doing is that we will work out on the various clauses which need to be corrected, so that we can have corrections in the contract itself. We have the corrections in the contract documents for consultants as well as contractors. We will try to get the rules and procedures corrected to cover the impact of COVID-19 in full, so that any other pandemic, if happens again, God forbid, we will not have to look at how to handle it. Let's prepare a comprehensive force majeure, so covering all these scenarios and the suggested changes on that account. Well, thank you very much for your participation. Be safe. Let's move ahead and try to work together to fast track the development now on. With these words, I would like to close this program for now. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you very much.